Welcome to another episode of The Independent Creator. This is a podcast pretty much for the independent creator that is looking for alternative platforms. Whether you're tired of Twitch or YouTube, you're going to look for places like Trovo, Omcast, or SharePlay, or LiveSpace. Or if you have a Discord server that you're kind of, like, I should do something else. Well, there's Gilded, there's Matrix, and many other different things. This is what this podcast is all about, is looking at the different platforms that are available out there for a inquiring independent creator. So I'm your host, Josh, and join me as we talk about tonight's topic, which is creating a video podcast. Or if you ever thought about creating a video podcast, we're going to look at a couple different options, scenarios, ways to host your episodes, and actually keep yourself organized while doing all this nonsense and craziness. So let's get down to it and get started with the episode. So you've decided that I'm going to join the train of people that are creating podcasts or video podcasts. Let's look at that on the aspect of this episode for tonight, because there are different ways that looking at different things. Is you have your video podcast, which this is pretty much. You also have your audio podcast, which has been around for decades, really. It started back, 20 years, not even 20 years ago. There's Apple Podcast had coined a term, or Apple really coined a term for podcast, of a condensed episode of an audio episode that, a couple people would put together, and it's kind of like a radio talk show that normally would be on the AM band. And this is more in line when the internet was starting to grow and become more, out there for everybody to enjoy. So the video side of things is kind of grew up from the podcast movement. Pretty much what I'm talking about is that the podcast that normally you would listen to, let's say on Pocket Cast or Spotify or anything like that, is that world is actually starting to shrink. Not that many advertisers or people listen to audio podcasts these days, because the pandemic actually changed our way of living and our way of thinking. Because at the time before pandemic days, you would spend an hour or two riding in your car or driving in your car to your work. So you would need to some kind of distraction. And music was, you didn't want to listen to music all the time, so you started listening to a podcast. And that helped create a buffer between home and work that you can kind of set yourself apart of. You kind of distract yourself from the rat race of your commute. Now, after the pandemic, and well, actually, I should say during the pandemic, not that many people were going anywhere. So podcasts were kind of falling off at the time. And I know because I was involved in a podcast earlier then as well. We called it the Geeks 2.0, where we usually talked about, basically bringing our kids up in to be as good-natured nerds and geeks as we are. So we were doing like a episode a month. We did that for almost 5 years, but it kind of fell off because the pandemic changed a lot of things in how we were conducting business and setting things up and getting things ready to go. So people weren't really listening to podcasts all that much. So the video side of things were starting to expand and become an outlet, so to speak, that these old podcasts were finding new life and beginning to get more or a different set of audience, because normally people would just not understand how RSS feeds work or look into like the side of Spotify that has all the podcast shows and stuff like that. So when people were starting, or these episodes or these shows are starting to kind of branch out, they were looking at YouTube, which YouTube was trying to break into the podcast space. And it took a long time. believe me, YouTube finally within the past year, they have released their podcast side or their podcast page, because before there we had Google Podcasts, which was a competitor, so to speak, to Apple Podcasts, where you can upload your show to and have your shows and episodes show up in Google's podcast player. Well, as all things, I should say, as most things Google touches or brings up into the world, it kills very quickly, or it gets bored of, and it just completely abandons it, and takes it behind the barn, and we know the rest. Well, they did that to Google Podcasts, rest its soul, and integrated it sort of into YouTube, because that's where they had moved Google Music into YouTube as well, much to a large number of people complaining about that. But that's a completely different topic and different show. So they were seeing, oh, well, we did this with music. How about we do this with our podcast? And it took a bit of time, as all things in YouTube. This ship does not turn on a dime, really. So it took some time, and finally, after many months, they decided to release YouTube Podcast. All it is you set it up. I'll be showing this here for just a moment. As setting up a playlist in your Google or your YouTube channel to act as the podcast or a podcast channel. That's all it was. It's a simple code and simple thing that they decided to go with in this route. So let's take a look and see what exactly I'm telling you or showing you here. Now, this, of course, as you're looking at this is the Indie Creator Hub YouTube channel. And of course, right now I have recording this live episode. So of course that shows up here, and this is all customizable too. So what they have here is I have a playlist dedicated to just the independent creator podcast. And if you have that or have a podcast set up in your channel, you'll have this new tab, which I am so thankful that Google and YouTube decided to implement this, because before, the previous implementation was very confusing. It was very messy. So they decided to spread things out. You got your live, your shorts, your regular videos, podcast, playlists, and community tabs, which is a great thing to do. So if you go into the podcast player here, or the podcast tab, you can see that there is a playlist for the independent creator. Now, depending on your channel, if you have set up multiple shows, you'll have to have multiple playlists, of course, for each podcast show that you're running. And it'll show up here. For me, I'm just running a one. So all I have is just a one playlist, which is the independent creator. And of course, you'll have the 2 episodes. And after next week, be 3 episodes, right? And then continue on down the line. Now, this operates just like any kind of playlist. You have each episode right here. The videos says 1, 2, 3, and it just goes down the line depending on how you have set it up. And yeah, it's like I said, it's a very simple way of thinking about it. All it is convert or set up to make a playlist with the podcast tag. And it's a great thing too, because if you go back into YouTube here, I go into, let's see, looking for podcast. All right, so on the bottom here, it's kind of, I wish I make it a little bit better with the, not discoverability, but the way how you find things a little bit better. But anyways, we'll click on podcast. And it'll take you to the podcast page of YouTube. And this is kind of like, set up in a certain way. It's not like promoting podcast. It promotes everything that is labeled a podcast. So you have, episodes, and this Brian Ted Cohen, it could be this episode here. You got NBC News, for some odd reason, is showing up as a podcast, even though it isn't a podcast. You got popular podcast playlist. You got H3, you got your recommendeds, mixing consoles, it kind of like your algorithm, what you've been watching via your channel. So it kind of, the algorithm knows all, and it shows you what it thinks that you might be interested in within the podcast section. But like I said, it's not set up in a way to be a podcast channel page. Because like I said, it shows up regular videos like the Tom Buck one here. This is a regular video that is, on YouTube. But I don't think Tom has set this up as his podcast, because he does have a podcast. It's the Enthusiasm Project, but that doesn't show up here. It's a regular video. So for some reason, YouTube is still not really getting the point of what a podcast is. I mean, they have, actual podcast stuff up here, like stuff you should know, 99% invincible, and the list goes on and on. It's just like the top of the line of people who get the front top header of the page here. But you want to know how to do this, right? So let's actually do this real quick. Is what you want to make sure is you have your channel set up. It's already been ready to go. You want to go into your YouTube studio. And now what you want to do is create a playlist. So what's the best way to do that, right? Click on create. It says new playlist, but it also says new podcast. It's a nice thing that they have this quick selection here, because let's go ahead and go into that. Now you want to create a new podcast, or do you want to set up an existing playlist as a podcast? And this is what entails where you're seeing where all these different random videos are showing up as podcasts, air quotes. And I guess the YouTube or the people decided, let's go ahead and set that as a podcast. By no means, go ahead and do that. But it's kind of defeating the purpose of what an actual podcast is. So for this, we'll go ahead and create a new podcast. And what you want to do is go ahead, fill in the information like the title, what your podcast description, what is it about? Is it going to be public or private or unlisted? And also upload a YouTube, a podcast banner or cover page. Now this is required because this also affects how it looks on your channel, or how the episodes are pushed out as well. And it's the same thing if you're setting up your podcast show within Apple Podcast Connect. You also need a picture as well. It's just kind of, it's a good thing to have ready to go, because it kind of differentiates your podcast from other places, and it helps also set the mood and what is to be expected from potential viewers or listeners to exactly what your podcast is about. So once you go ahead and do that and hit create, I'm going to go ahead and hit cancel, because I don't want to go ahead and mess things up. Then we go back to our channel. And I guess, yes, YouTube for whatever reason sometimes freaks out and, doesn't do exactly what it's told. But if we go back to our channel, and then what you'll notice, you'll have a podcast tab here showing up within your channel. If it doesn't show up, just give it a couple minutes, maybe an hour or two. It will appear. And also, if you have live content like what I'm doing right now, it'll also appear within the live tab as well, which is, like I said, this is a great thing that YouTube has decided to do this, keeping things quite nice and organized and not a mess where everything was all within the video side here. So you had shorts, lives, and all sorts of, everything was all jumbled in one section, which was a complete mess and it was not good whatsoever. Now, going through how doing this is quite easy, but should you do a video podcast? Well, that's actually your decision. And I think more than likely the best scenario that you can probably go with is doing an audio, just starting out. Because most of the time you would have to have, don't get me wrong, start out with a video one, that's no problem. But more than likely you don't have the equipment if you're just starting out and you're working off a very shoestring budget or less than a shoestring budget. And all you would have is just a really an okay microphone, which, you know what? Microphones from, if you find, $30 to $60 are perfectly good. They have decent quality. They're not the best, but they get you into that door. So you have your audio, your microphone, which is the most important part. If you want to go with the video, the best thing that you do is more than likely you have a camera already. It's called your phone. You don't need to do an hour-long podcast. You can do 10 to 30 or 40-minute long podcast, and that's perfectly fine to sit there with your phone on a tripod or on a stack of books or whatever that you are, on a selfie stick that you dug out from your closet from a couple years past, and use that, because the camera on your phone is a very good quality. We're not talking like if you're still stuck with the original Moto Razr, and of course that camera is a potato. But I mean, any decent phone from the past couple, like 5 to 6 years, be no problem. Or if you have like a C920 that you've had to get because work demanded you to have video conferencing during the pandemic or during the lockdowns. So you got 920, which is a very capable device. And it's been around for decades. 10, 15 years? It's still a very capable webcam. Yeah, it's not the best, but you know what? Starting out, you don't need the best. You don't need to get what's called gas. You don't need gas. Gear acquisition syndrome. You don't need to get the best of the best. You don't need to get a Shure SM7B. You don't need to get a DSL camera that has a full frame with the expensive lens, so you can get that full, background blur and all this other stuff that you think because you see other people using it, you need to get it. No, you don't. I started with a C920, I didn't start with a USB mic. I started with an XLR mic, going into a $20 converter box, go from XLR to USB, plugged into my computer, and it was like a $60 XLR mic. Yeah, I probably splurged a little bit. No, the first one was a $20 mic I got off Amazon. You know, the bright blue one they normally see with a kit with an arm and everything. Yeah, $20 kit. So for $40, and then I got the C920 at, I forget, I paid probably $50, $60. So less than, just about $100, you're good to go. And I didn't need to use the camera. I could have, just gone off and just done the audio portion, but I wanted to do the video eventually. I started my podcast journey just doing audio. We did about 10 or 12 episodes before I decided, let's go ahead, add a video aspect into things. So that's where I decided, started collecting stuff. Eventually down the road, a couple years later, got another couple things and branched out and got, we can do remote setups. Have all like four people on one device. What do I need? Oh, the Rodecaster just came out. Let me get that. And then the lockdown a couple months later. I'm like, well, damn it. Oh, well, things happen, right? So you don't need to have all this stuff on the onset and getting things together. But what you do need is a place to store your episodes. And that's what we're going to talk about here on next, is that actually you need a place to upload your episodes after you get done recording them, doing whatever kind of editing. Or if you say, no, screw it, I'm not going to do any editing. It's going to be raw and unfiltered. Just put it out there as is. And that's perfectly fine. There's a lot of podcasts that are in the same position as you or like that type of style content. But there are plenty of places to host your podcast episodes. And there's some great ones. There's some not so great ones that don't offer you a lot. But the one I use is a podcast hosting called Captivate. Now, they're offering a lot of stuff that you could look into for very minimal cost. I believe it's $20 a month, and you can upload as many things as you want. So let's take it monthly. Yeah, it's $20 a month. You get up to 30,000 downloads a month, unlimited podcasts, which I looked at a couple different companies. Only a few companies or podcast hosters actually have this capability or offer this capability. Is you can have one account for multiple shows. There's some companies out there that don't allow you to do that. They don't have the capability for that. Is that if you want a podcast A, and you also have to have another account for podcast B, which at the time that can be very expensive. Let's say it's $20 per account. So you're already at $40 for 2 shows. And if you're doing another show, that's $60 because you need an account for yet another episode or another show. So Captivate allows you to have unlimited shows. You can have 3, 4, 20 different podcast shows on one account for $20 a month. And it's unlimited uploads and storage, and you can have a distribution list out the wazoo. Now, yes, you're limited to the number of downloads per month, but the 30,000 downloads, that is high for a show that's just getting started, or is for a very highly niche show that is really don't have the reach of, let's say, H3 and or Behind the Bastards or any kind of these big name productions and podcasts that you've probably listened to yourself. They're probably looking in the range of thousands, I'm not saying, but millions of downloads per month. And that's great. If your show is getting millions of downloads per month, that is pretty freaking awesome. Yeah, pat yourself on the back there, because that's a huge milestone. But for a show that is just starting out, or you're just getting into doing podcasts, a personal plan is more than enough. With 30,000 downloads a month, that is a huge number. You're looking at probably anywhere from 10 to maybe 300 downloads per month, depending on the popularity of your show. So to think of that, you might be going over 30,000 is okay. Down the line, yes, you might want to start looking into the professional side, which is only $50 a month, but at that time it's 150,000 downloads, and you're probably also getting a residual income from your audience, help supporting the show. So that is being offset of the cost that you normally would have to go into. So it's a win-win, yay. But let me show you exactly what Captivate offers. And it's a lot of stuff that they offer, not just, what you see here, but no, you get a podcast webpage that sets up a listing for all your episodes, show notes when you put them in. And the nice thing with Captivate is that they also have a guest booking feature that makes things a lot easier. So if you're a podcast that likes to do bring guests in, you can set that up where your guests can come in and schedule a time for conducting the interview. And you can also set up pre-show notes, getting things all together for that particular episode that will transfer from like the draft, getting things together, to the actual show notes for the episode when it goes live. And analytics is a great thing as well, that a lot of other companies offer analytics. So that's a nice thing. Podcast promotion, you get Captivate sites with your website for your podcast. Get private podcasting. You can also set up donations or tips that come in through your podcast page. So it all kind of sets everything up into one location that you don't have to go you don't have to advertise a Patreon or a Ko-fi or any other site. You can have it all just within Captivate. Now, there is another side of thing. If you are of the open source and you want more control over like your privacy and stuff like that, let me show you this podcast it's a self-hosting. Sorry, self-hosting is called Castopod. Now, this is a free open source solution if you don't want to go through and you have the hardware or you want to do it everything yourself. The problem is that you are going to have to take care of everything yourself. The server infrastructure costs, the maintenance of that, and also you have to worry about the amount of downloads, your storage, and things that you normally wouldn't have to think about if you had on a hosted plan with another company like Captivate. Now, this is, like I said, if you're part of the open source community and you want to have that whole control, which is awesome. I wish a lot of people would go that route. Now, this offers the same, pretty much the same stuff that you saw on Captivate, just that it's self-hosted, that you control, and it's everything that you can think of. That you can promote your podcast. You also get a way to send out your RSS feed to the different podcast players, like again, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Pocket Cast and the like. You also get analytics. You can also publish your podcast for free, or you can monetize it through premium subscriptions, micropayments, tips, or automatically embed listen to click ads using the cookieless solution, for example, that's they have there. So this is another option that is available to pretty much anyone that has the capability, the know-how, and let's say the gumption. I couldn't think of a better word, but the gumption, to do that. So if you have, let's say, spin up a server on Hetzner, and then you can install this on your server and start posting or uploading your episodes to your Castopod instance on your own server, you have full and utter control throughout, the entire thing. So what other ways do you think of that? Well, I can look at how to do this. I can look through video podcasting, getting things set up. I can go ahead and do that through OBS. I can go ahead get my hosting set up through either Captivate or Castopod or Podbean or Transistor or any other different places. But how do I really keep things organized? Well, organization is actually the bane of, any content creator, any independent creator is trying to keep things organized. Hell, you can write stuff in a book. A lot of people do that. They like, going things about that way. But what I like personally, and also full disclosure, I am an affiliate for Notion, is using Notion as a way to keep yourself organized. Let me show you how I do that through Notion and give you kind of a behind the scenes peek of what I do. Now, I have this creator dashboard that I've actually bought from Sam Woodhull, and I'll have the link and everything down below. And I've posted his link to his store page many times. Also sent it out on the Mastodon and on Blue Sky and Threads, everywhere else. I've gone through several different dashboards and ways of organizing as a content creator. And what Sam's method and his template is actually the easiest way I've found for me personally to work and getting things done and taken care of. Now, of course, as you can see here, I have a lot of stuff already in the pipeline. I'm working on different things. I got content already made, ready to go, sitting there, ready to be posted up to YouTube and TikTok and different live. And also, of course, as you can see here, the live stream for this one today, for this episode. Now, his method of setting a template up in Notion is, I'm not going to say genius, but it is genius. It's easy to work with, and it breaks things down in a very easy manner of putting things in their own spots. What do you mean by that? I mean, if I go to the content vault here, he has set it up where a publishing schedule, I have a Kanban board view, I have videos, which are just, the long form videos. I got short form, all your TikToks, YouTube shorts. I have these all set, ready to go. These are all set. I've recorded, edited, captioned. There's just sitting there waiting to be scheduled. I got my live stream postings. So I have, like, for tonight, I got the Indie Game Spotlight and first 2 hours episodes all set. I kind of like to go through, I like to do at least a week in advance. If I want to do 2 weeks in advance, I would love to do that too, but I don't really get that far. I don't want to, say, oh, in 2 weeks I have to do this. I like to do it, and I'll probably start doing it more, but it's just personal journey. So I like to go do things slowly and get comfortable with the way it's going first, and then I'll add on to it. And then you also got your written works. So I got 2 more. This is for tomorrow's, or the next, when this live stream, this is tomorrow's blog post I'll be posting up. And I got to go in and add some more ideas and more blog posts to finish out the rest of Blogust, the rest of the month of August. And you also have your podcast, and I got to take care of that because that actually came out today as an audio version. This is more for the audio version side of things. So again, I like how it's all broken down in a way that is easy to look through. I want to look at live stream. All right, go to live stream section. So if I want to go to, let's open this one up. This is tonight's episode. And now this is completely customizable. What you get with Sam's template is a lot of stuff. But if you don't use all this stuff, because if you don't do A-roll, B-rolls, and stuff like that, you don't need to worry about it whatsoever. It's the building blocks. It's the foundation of what he's built in a way that is geared for more of a I don't want to sound insulting, but a lower tier content creator, a small content creator, because there's other ones I've gotten from, like Thomas Frank. His content creation template is very overwhelming when you look at it, because his mindset of looking at it as a content creator and what he's looked at as a way to find things and be organized is very overwhelming. Yes, I said that twice, but it is overwhelming. So there's a lot of stuff that was in there, and it's just kind of like, whoa, hold on. I don't need all this right off the bat. Even with Sam's stuff, yeah, it has a lot of things here, but you don't need to do this. You don't need to add it. Like you see here, I haven't really touched much of this at all. Like, you have a nice checklist. If you have a problem trying to keep your, you do a live stream and you're always forgetting something, you have a checklist here that you can go through. It's like, okay, I gotta start OBS. Okay, is the correct scene ready? Check. Okay, and just go down the list. And I like how he has it all set up with the different color coding and the optional. And then during the stream, you can cite sources and do like a script if you like going off a script. So there are different ways to look at this that are added. It's like I said, it's a foundation. It's there if you want to use it. It's not mandatory to use it. You don't need to use any of all this at all, because most of us are not at the level where Sam is, because his workflow is much different than my workflow. I'm more of like a loosey-goosey kind of person. I like some structure. I'm trying to get better with my structure, but I'm not at the point where I'm using all of the stuff that is built in. Down the road, when I start, setting my workflow and getting more and more used to it, not say used to it, but more accustomed to doing it a certain way and adding another procedure into it, and then getting used to that as well, then I can start using, adding in, the pre-production and getting more involved with that. But for $25, you get a hell of a lot of stuff for a Notion template that, works for pretty much almost everybody. Let's say 98% of the content creators out there, live streamers, YouTubers, bloggers, whatever. You have it all here. So definitely, I have a link if you want to check out. If you haven't really looked at Notion, I do have a video. I'm going to be setting up another video where I go through and creating your Notion account and getting involved with Notion and working inside it a little bit more. Because I have a feel I have a theory that, hey, future Josh here. Just to come in at the end of this episode, we had some kind of corrupted file issue, which pretty much knocked the last 20 to, let's say, about 20 minutes or so of the podcast episode out of commission. So unfortunately, there is no way to rebuild. So this is going to be the end of the episode, but look for next week is going to be a little bit better. Hopefully, crossing our fingers and everything. But until then, have a good night and see you on the next episode of The Independent Creator.